Welcome to Intro to Regulated Plant Medicine, also known as Cannabis 101. Today, we're just going to go through a lot of basic information, a lot of information that maybe people don't have, or maybe they've had a lot of different myths kind of thrown at them, a lot of different things of stigmatization about the cannabis plant in general. So I hope to, more than anything, when you leave here, have a lot of information, also be able to share the information that you learned from today. Okay. All right, so my name is Sarie McGlone. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor as well as a certified cannabis educator. I wear many hats, as you guys know, but at the heart of it all, I am more than anything just a healer and advocate, using education as a tool for liberation and healing, and in just empowering our community. Titles aside, I'm here because I deeply care about people having access to real, honest information, just about wellness, mental health, and actual cannabis, right? Beyond just my degrees and my license, I'm someone who's committed to meeting folks where they are, and planting seeds of knowledge, especially in a space where it's been withheld the most. I hold a master's in clinical mental health counseling from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. My work is mainly rooted in evidence-based practices and trauma-informed care, but I always, try to do it from a cultural affirming lens as well. I am a licensed therapist in Maryland, and over the years, I've worked for nonprofits or for-profit settings, employee assistance programs, as well as rehabilitation centers in the community clinic. And I find that, today I really enjoy working with the private practice Restore Tranquility, that is based in Silver Spring, where we do integrated mental health education with intentional and mindful cannabis use as well. So I did become a certified cannabis educator through the Cannabis Coaching Institute. That was mainly out of Canada. And that training really focused on the actual science of the plant, reducing the stigma and encouraging safe and responsible cannabis use. It really gave me the tools personally to support people who want to explore cannabis as an actual wellness tool and actually be informed, be intentional and non-judgmental space, right? So that all stemmed from when I literally was in the hospital. I was having stroke level risk, where my blood pressure was so high, because I was working in a setting that was not aligned with what my passion was. I decided I wanted to quit therapy. I was like, I'm not going to be a counselor anymore. I'm this is too much, because I'm not, you know, the stress of the work. Counselors really do not get paid that much, right? So the stress of the work was just really overwhelming. And so I quit my job, and just so happened I had found this program, the Cannabis Coaching Institute, and I actually ended up winning a scholarship, a 50% off scholarship to actually complete the program. And so for 3 months, I was in the midst of job searching and also doing the program. And I just learned so much information. And I then at that time became a medical patient myself. And I was able to reduce my blood pressure, and get off my medication by working with CBD tinctures. And so therefore it really helped me to kind of have just a found renewal of like, oh wait, this is medicine and we have to be able to understand and use it the correct way. So it was just really good for me, and I really just enjoyed being able to share with other people how this could be useful for them in the future. So then, fast forward, I ended up taking another job as a therapist. Why? Because one, I have realized that bills still needed to be paid. I just had to find a different contract that worked more for myself, right? So in that of still being a therapist, I also then found this program called the Center of Medicinal Mindfulness out in Colorado, that was really doing a lot of really great and groundbreaking work, through the Colorado Natural Psychedelic Act out there. And so I was like, okay, so you guys are actually using cannabis for psychedelics? Never heard of that. Let me learn more about it, right? So I read his book, Daniel McQueen, The Psychedelic Cannabis. And the way that they actually decided to use it, it really just dived into how the training really shapes for to navigate trauma and emotional blocks, as well as healing through plant medicine, specifically cannabis. They also do DMT. Um, as well as ketamine and psilocybin. So all of those things I can kind of go back if I want to get to relearn. But right now, my focus and my passion really lies in cannabis. So I ended up becoming going through their training program, which is actually coming to Maryland. We will be doing that in September of this year, and it's open to not just clinicians, but any person that wants to learn how to be a mindfulness-based psychedelic guide. So that's what I became. And then I also work with someone who also became a mindfulness based psychedelic therapist that took a little bit more training as well. So, been working with that. So, just get settled in a little bit. We're going to have some really good conversations about mental health, boundaries, and healing, and even in a little humor. I also do co host with the Restore Tranquility owner, Siobhan Larice, who's also a psychedelic guide, psychedelic mindfulness-based psychedelic therapist, as well as a registered yoga therapist and a licensed therapist as well. And we do a YouTube podcast. You can search it for Restore Tranquility, and we cover mental health as well as psychedelic wellness, keeping it real, laughter, truth, and just with grace, right? I'm also a proud social equity licensee, license awardee, in collaboration with my husband, who was actually directly impacted by the war on drugs, and holding one of the few licenses under the Cannabis Reform Act. This isn't just a personal win for us, but it's a win for the culture itself, our future cannabis cultivation, as well as just understanding and being able to provide meaningful and the facts, evidence-based research for the community and education and at the front and center of everything. So when I say this space is meant for everyone, whether you're new to cannabis, returning after a long break, or just curious but cautious, I see you, and I really hope that you just enjoy the journey of actually just getting to learn about it and seeing if there's any way that it might be helpful for you. It's not for everyone, but more than anything, I'm just here to offer tools, the truth, and just education along the way. All right, so what we'll learn today, we're going to take a moment to talk about what you can expect from today, which first, of course, we're going to go through the basics of the cannabis plant itself, what it is, where it comes from, why is there so much confusion about it in the first place, right? And then talking about how it interacts with our actual body. What is this thing called the endocannabinoid system and how it really plays a role in our mood, our sleep, our appetite, as well as even our pain sensors. And this is why cannabis affects us all so differently. When we explore the various ways of consuming cannabis as well, from smoking to edibles to tinctures or even topicals, the pros and cons of each. And spoiler alert, there is no right way to do it. I promise you, it's all about what works best for you and your body. This is why, if you've ever had your experience with cannabis before, you two people can take the same exact edible and have totally different experiences. Okay. So we're going to talk about how to choose the right products, how to read the labels, understand the difference between THC and CBD in the ratios, as well as the role terpenes play in the experience itself. And where cannabis, this is where cannabis gets more personal. It makes it more for you specifically. It's not a one size fit all. And throughout all of this, we're going to weave in also some education that's really left out of cannabis. So, the culture, the context, the mental health, especially for our communities. We'll talk about stigma as well as healing and harm reduction. Because this is just so much more than a plant. It's really about reclaiming our wellness. And so, whether you're totally new or just curious, I want you to walk away from today feeling more informed and more empowered to make the right decision that's for you. All right, before we go even further and dive into the science and the history, I want to name some things very upfront, right? Let's get the myths out the way because there's some things that most of us didn't grow up learning about cannabis as a tool for healing. We heard myths and really a lot of fear tactics and a lot of judgment being passed down. So first things first, cannabis is not a gateway drug. It is not a gateway drug. The real gateway, honestly, is the unaddressed trauma, the stress, the racial oppression, and the lack of support. It's not the plant. Cannabis also does not make you lazy. Poor education and poor product usage. Many people use cannabis to actually focus, to work out, to create, and to even parent with more calmness and actually be present for their children. You don't need a white coat to validate your own healing. While medical advice is very important, and as you will see, I'm sure there are some, I see some nurses on the line as well here. Medical advice is very important, but many cultures also have used plant medicine without a prescription for generations. We will go through the history a little bit more as we continue. Um, we also want to talk about how THC and CBD are both valuable. THC isn't just the good part, and sorry, CBD is not just the good part, and THC is not just the bad part. They're both tools, and it's about balance and not having a bias about either one of them, okay? And more importantly, they work really well together. So again, just trying to get a better understanding of what this plant really means and what it can be helpful for. Also, cannabis is not about just getting high. It's about getting in tune with your body, your need, and your nervous system and your truth. Okay. So, again, we're here not just to learn about the plant, but to unlearn some of these stigma things that keep our community from accessing the healing that it actually needs. So, again, we're going to work on separating the facts from fear and education that can be empowerment. Okay. Now, before I even jump in on this, I do want to let you guys know that although we are recording, any questions that are put in the chat, I will get to at the end once I stop the recording, and then we will go ahead and chat a little bit more about that in the open space, okay? Now, for when it comes to cannabis, culture, and the war on drugs. So, you can't talk about cannabis without talking about justice. The same plant that is now being sold in really fancy iPhone, Apple store looking dispensaries, and even sometimes even on Wall Street, have been the reason why people were arrested, locked up, and separated from their families or left out of the industry's success in general. So let's clear up the war on actual drugs. Was a war on Black and Brown communities. It really stemmed from just the very beginning of trying to isolate Black and Brown communities so therefore they can separate and choose to criminalize our actions. So according to the ACLU, Black people are still 3.6 times more likely to be arrested for cannabis than white people, despite the equal usage. So the fact that there's this stigma that Black and brown people use marijuana a lot more when it's not true, it's actually equal rates of usage, and how whole generations have been criminalized to for carrying something that they're now selling for a profit, often in spaces where we're not invited to even be at the table at. So this is why just education, I don't do just education. I also advocate for everyone in the community that it's a space where we can have a seat at the table and actually go ahead and go further and learn about healing together. So again, social equity is not just a buzzword, it is a necessity. Even with all the things going on currently in this world, we have to understand that there has been a lot of things stolen, not just financially, but spiritually, culturally, and communally wise, right? So the business is not just about cannabis, but it's about making a legacy. And it starts with having education, access, and the opportunity to reach the people who need it the most. Okay. So, as we continue to go through this presentation, it's again about reclaiming the relationship with the plant and not just healing, but also for justice. All right. So, before we get into the cannabinoids and terpenes, all the technical pieces, I want to root us in something a little bit more deeper, the history. We come from people who healed with these plants. Long before cannabis was ever politicized or criminalized, it was medicine. It was a ritual and it was a relationship. Across the African diaspora, cannabis and other sacred herbs were used for childbirth, spiritual ceremonies, as well as pain relief. In specifically West Africa, it used to be infused with foods and applied as topicals. When it comes to in Afro-Caribbean traditions, it's been long for parts of healing and grounding ceremonies. But the history is global. So it's not just, from specifically the African continents, but it's also in India. It's been used for over 3,000 years in Ayurvedic medicine, as well as Hindu spiritual rituals. In India, it was documented to in actual medical texts as early as 2700 BCE, used for pain, digestion, and even memory support. In Middle East, ancient Persian and Islamic texts describe it being used for mental health and physical healing. In indigenous American cultures, cannabis and similar herbs are part of the ceremony, healing, and communion with nature. So when we talk about cannabis today, we're not talking about a trend, we're talking about a legacy. And that said, let me offer also just a quick disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I do not prescribe or diagnose specifically when it comes to cannabis and the different ailments to actually get a cannabis medical card. Everything I share is grounded in research that I have found through multiple sources, which I will cite at the end, as well as lived experience and actual ancestral wisdom. And you'll hear me say different phrases like it may support, some studies suggest. Again, this is research based. I'm not doing this just off of my own personal experience. But let's be honest that cannabis interacts with everyone differently. There is no one size fit all product or approach. Your cannabis experience will be shaped by your own individual endocannabinoid system, which is just as unique as a fingerprint. So my role is not to give you a one-way prescription. My role is to offer a perspective, options, and empowerment so that you can decide what wellness means for you. All right, so what is cannabis? All right, so all of these different words used for it. I think right now TikTok's using it as gardening, right? So there's a lot of different words, right? But cannabis is one plant. No matter whether you can qualify it as hemp or THC-rich, it is still cannabis. It's the same plant. She's known as Cannabis sativa as the actual botanical name. And over time, people have cultivated her in different ways, whether it's needed for fibers and clothing, healing, food, and relaxation. So a lot of us were taught that cannabis and hemp are totally different plants. And the truth is they're actually sisters. They're the same exact DNA, the same root system, just grown for different purposes. Okay, so the only legal distinction, at least in the US, is how much THC is in the actual plant. So if it has less than 0.3% THC or less, it's considered hemp. Now, what we are finding now, it did become legal. So hemp did become legal under the 2018 U.S. Farm Bill. But again, hemp can also be used for textiles, clothing. It used to be used for the sails, the actual sails of the boats. And it also now, we are now seeing a lot more of the hemp derived CBD or even some THC, which that's, a little bit of cause for concern because it's not regulated. And just to make sure we understand that cannabis is not legal in Maryland, it is regulated. In all the other states, it's not legal, it's regulated, okay? Because it's still federally illegal. And so just having a better understanding of that. So again, if it has more than the 0.3%, it falls then into what we consider THC-rich cannabis, right? Now understand that this 0.3% was not chosen on actual science. It had nothing to do with science saying this is the differential, like this is the difference between these two. It was mainly on political stances. So it has nothing to do with science. And so again, hemp is more for ropes, papers, fibers. The seeds were used as fuel. They're just as rich as omega-3 and chia seeds, right? And so the stalks were used as fiber for clothing. And so when people think of cannabis, they think of weed, right? It was cultivated for its psychoactive and medicinal properties, but at its core, they're the same plant. There is no difference. The hemp seed and the cannabis seed is the same exact thing. Okay. So if you're using, let's say, CBD oil from hemp or CBD oil from actual a non CB maybe a THC higher flower because you can have both, right? You're still connecting with cannabis just in a different way. She's very dynamic and versatile, and she can even kind of mirror a lot of different other medicines in the natural plant medicine space. Okay. So, whether it's for rituals and healings or everyday resources, cannabis has been a part of our wellness for a millennia in different countries. And so, it's just the fact of getting back to the roots and understanding how we can use it today. Okay, so cannabis is not new. It's not a street drug. And that's just really stigma talking. My role here is to make you see cannabis clearly with reverence, choice, and agency, not fear and shame. All right, so let's get to the cannabinoids. All right, so cannabinoids are the natural compounds found in the cannabis plant. And this is what gives cannabis its potential effects on our brain and our body, right? So different cannabinoids may support different kinds of relief. So, for example, we have people that, most people know THC, CBD, but there's actually over 100 different cannabinoids in the plant. Okay, so in your plant, you see THC, CBD, but you also might be CBG or CBN or THCV. All of these have whether they're minor or acid molecules, but again, all common breakdown of it's still the same plant. Okay. All right, so THC is the cannabinoid most people associate with feeling high. It does have intoxicating effects. It's also linked to some euphoria. It helps support sleep or increase appetite, as well as is very much a pain reliever. So CBD is always going, so THC is always going to be psychoactive and intoxicating. Now, CBD, on the other hand, is non-intoxicating, but it is still psychoactive, meaning it does affect your brain and your mood. So you won't feel high, but you will probably feel more calmer, have a better mood balance. You just feel a little bit better, and it is very much anti-inflammatory for your whole body system, okay? Now we have minor cannabinoids where we have CBG, which helps you focus, helps relieve anxiety, as well as it still relieves that inflammation in your body. Again, we can find those in more of the early stages of a cannabis plant. Again, so then we have CBN. So this one's all often associated with sleep and sedation, very much relaxing. This is when basically if you find old THC flower, if you let it sit in the windowsill and let it get kind of like that brownish color, it starts to oxidize. That's when you get CBN that has, again, most of the sleep and sedation affect. You do still feel a little high, but it brings it down a lot more, okay? And then we have THCV, sometimes known as diet weed. It really suppresses your appetite and it promotes very much clarity and even some energy in smaller doses. So again, there's over 100 of these cannabinoids. So these are just five. So again, there's so much more that this plant can do. But again, right now it's being currently bred for the THC and CBD qualities. And you'll find maybe a few tinctures and things like that in actual dispensaries, but there's not as much focus on these other ones, even though they are really helpful. All right. So, let's see. They work better together. So all of these things, again, they're all in the same plant. So depending on what it's bred for, we have what is called the entourage effect. So this is when the compounds of the plant, including the terpenes, which we will get to later, work together to enhance the actual person's impact on their endocannabinoid system. So instead of chasing one compound, saying I only want to use THC or I only want to use CBD, most people find that the broad spectrum or maybe a full spectrum product that includes multiple cannabinoids offers a more well-rounded support. So one of the, a really well-known study from the National Academics of Science, Engineering, and Medicine in 2017 found that cannabis can actually be used effectively for chronic pain in adults, but the results vary depending on the cannabinoid makeup and delivery method. Again, because everyone has a different endocannabinoid system that reacts differently to the cannabis plant in general. So again, not a one size fit all, but finding the right combination for your body and your goals and your level is the most important part. All right, moving on. So I've been talking about this endocannabinoid system, and now we're going to get a little bit more into it so you guys understand what I mean by that, right? So this is one of my favorite parts of the presentation because this is where the science really supports what many cultures have known for centuries, that cannabis works with our body, not against it. So for one, your endocannabinoid system, everyone has one. Regardless if you use cannabis or not, you have an endocannabinoid system. Unfortunately, I think it's maybe 10% of medical schools are even teaching doctors about this. So your doctor probably doesn't even understand what it is. So this is why we have all of these different associations and these webinars to really have a firm understanding of what it is because it's in everyone's body. It's producing it by itself. Um, so again, it plays a really key role specifically in keeping your internal systems balanced. Think about like your nervous system, your muscular system. It's the same system that every single person has, and it's unique to you just as your fingerprint. And in order to keep that internal balance, we call homeostasis, right? So it can regulate things like mood, sleep, appetite, your immune responses, and as well as pain and inflammation in your body. Think of it like your body's wellness thermostat. It helps bring it back into alignment where you're too far off in any direction. So the endocannabinoid system is made up of receptors called CB1 and CB2, and they're found throughout our whole entire body. As you can see in the diagram, our brain has both CB1 and CB2 receptors versus our lungs have just CB1. Our bones have CB2, our muscles CB1, our immune system CB2, right? So CB1 receptors are mainly in your brain and nervous system, while CB2 receptors are mostly in your immune and gut support, okay? So when cannabis, in actual the different cannabinoids, so THC or CBD, they mimic or influence your body's natural endocannabinoid system. So they bind to and modulate these receptors to actually regulate certain processes. So that's why cannabis affects your mind, your mood, your body, all because it's all connected throughout. So sometimes people say, "Oh, I feel it in my body" versus "I feel it in my head," right? It's also explains why cannabis makes every person feel different. So this is based on your genetics, your stress level, as well as your diet, any trauma that you have, as well as your own lifestyle. So this is why two people can, again, take the same product, but have completely different experiences. Some researchers like Dr. Ethan Russo also proposed an idea where it's talking a little bit more about the clinical endocannabinoid deficiencies. So let me go ahead and jump over there before I get too ahead of myself. So when we're talking about this dysfunction, there's a deficiency and there's overactivity. All right. So because of this, we have different things where the deficiency may occur when your body is not producing enough endocannabinoids, right? And that's where we find it in fibromyalgia, IBS, migraines, PTSD, anxiety and depression, chronic pain, and inflammation. But then we have on the other side, we have the overactivity where it may be occurring because too many cannabinoids are being produced or not broken down properly. So this is where we see a lot in obesity, type 2 diabetes, and just increased inflammatory markers, okay? So those different things. So again, the deficiency will help with you actually do take more cannabis consumption with guidance, have more physical movement, stress regulation, and have a rich omega-3 diet versus the overactivity may be supported by there's still more research that needs to be done, but enzyme modulation, which so it's going to be more of a lifestyle shift for exercising, fasting, plant-based support. Okay. So again, these are just different ways that people are not talking about how the endocannabinoid system that every single person has, regardless if you use cannabis or not, how it's affecting our bodies and trying to keep that homeostasis. All right. So the soul of the plant, the terpenes. So this is the smell, the vibe, the therapeutic potential. Terpenes are found not only in cannabis, but they're found in very much other different fruits. So this is where you think about mangoes, lemongrass, oranges, lavender, pine needles, clovers, different like black pepper. So again, the actual smell of the cannabis. So where we bust one of the biggest myths is that indica puts you in the couch and sativa makes you clean the house. That's not true. Let's that's not based on science. That's very much an outdated plant category. And yes, I know dispensaries are using it, but that's just because it's easy for people to categorize what they are. What you should be looking at if you are going into the dispensaries and looking at the terpenes. If you have more of a myrcene in it, no matter if it's labeled sativa or not, myrcene's always going to be more relaxing, more sedative, and also really helpful with pain. Okay, so limonene is great for that mood, that boost of energy, that anxiety. But having too much limonene would also increase anxiety. Okay, so we have to be able to balance it out. Um, Terpenes are again found in different oils, fruits, different flowers. Think about THC as the engine and terpenes as the steering wheel. They don't change where the car is necessarily moving, but they do the direction of where you go and how you feel. So again, so we even have linalool here. Linalool is found in lavender. So it's known for promoting rest, relaxation. Even some people say it helps with tension and pain. We have then pinene. Pinene you'll see on there as alpha pinene or beta pinene, which again helps you stay more focused and alert. Fun fact, it does also help counteract the short-term memory loss from THC. So if you have some pinene in there, you're gonna have better memory, okay? Um, Now we have beta caryophyllene, which is really unique. This is probably one of the top ones you see a lot between myrcene, limonene, and beta caryophyllene in a lot of different cannabis products where this one actually binds specifically to your endocannabinoid receptors, like an actual cannabinoid. And so it really helps you to reduce inflammation in your body and also helps with your gut health. Again, it's really important here that we don't pay attention to the strain names. They're completely inconsistent. They're really much marketing driven. Literally, someone can grow a plant and call it Ghost Pepper Rider, and literally, there is no actual legacy behind it. There's no telling what it actually does or what the actual terpenes are about it. Okay, so Super Boof, um, Cherry Haze, they have the names actually really mean nothing. This is someone decided to have that name. They thought it sounded good, and so they put it on the package. Okay, so that really does not actually give any idea of what the actual cannabis plant, what the terpenes look like. Okay. So your body already knows what it likes. So this is why, and it's unfortunate. I don't know where, depending on which subject you guys are, this is why it's really important to actually get back to the education of cannabis because our body knows what we like. So if you smell an actual cannabis plant and you're just like, I don't like how that smells, it's more than likely the terpene does not work with your body. There's some cannabis plants that they smell so different. They range so much. So if you like the smell of it, more than likely it's what your body actually needs. So if it smells inviting, if it smells delicious, your body's saying, yes, that will work for me, versus your body saying, that's not, I don't like that smell. I don't know what that is, but it's not for what I need. Okay. So it's really gotten to the point where I wish people could have more, be able to select their flower based on smell alone, because your nose will start to let you know what type of things that you actually need from the plant and what works best for you. So again, it's not in the name, it's in the nose. And then terpenes really steer your whole experience. THC is just it's just you getting started. It's not even the whole actual kit and caboodle of it, right? All right, so let's go in a little bit more into the knowing your why. So before we go into products and dosing and terpene and like as you see, we already did the terpene profiles. I want to kind of pause and just invite you to ask yourself a really important question on this journey. Why are you here? Why are you curious about cannabis right now? What's coming up for you? And how do you want it to support you? Is it because you're not sleeping? Is it because you feel anxious, or maybe you're looking just to feel more connected or more present in your body, or just get more in touch with your creative or sensuality? So your why is your wellness intention, and setting your intention and what separates mindful cannabis use from mindless consumption. Okay. So some people come to cannabis for physical reasons, right? Chronic pain, inflammation, trouble sleeping, while others are there for more the emotional support, anxiety, trauma, stress, and depression. And some people are just curious. They want to know how cannabis can actually support them, whether it's spirituality, creativity, or intimacy. You don't need to have a full healing plan today, but just having an idea of a clear intention of why you want to use cannabis will help you steer you to the right product, the right dosage, as well as the right consumption method, okay? So I often say in my practice is that cannabis is a tool. Your intentions are actually the guide. So if your goal is to calm your nervous system right after a stressful day, that might lean you towards more of a CBD or a relaxing terpene like linalool or myrcene. But if you're trying to spark joy or focus, you might go a different, more something more energizing like pinene or limonene. Okay. So if you're not sure of your why yet, it's okay. The plant can meet you at your curiosity too, as long as you're open to listen to what it is your body needs. So again, just take a moment to ask yourself, what do I want cannabis to help me with right now? And how do I want to feel after using it? All right. So now kind of getting into once you've actually set your intentions, we want to actually choose the consumption method that works best for you. So how do you want to engage with the plant? Cannabis is one plant, but there are many ways to experience it, and each method affects your body differently. So I'm going to walk through the top ones on here on the screen here. So smoking, whether it's from a joint, a pipe, a bong, those are the most traditional methods. You'll feel the effects within minutes, and they usually last between 1 to 3 hours. Great for fast relief. Great for when you're in like chronic pain where it's just too much to handle, maybe back spasms, things like that, you'll feel the fast relief instantly, right? Or even societal uses, but it can also irritate your lungs, of course, right? Any type of burning of a product is going to irritate your lungs. Um, Now, one thing I also want to disclose here, this next one is vaping. Now, when I say vaping, I do not mean the ones with the cartridge of oil, because unfortunately, when they try to make it into more of an oil for someone to smoke, they add a lot of a lot of other chemicals. And that can also then bring more inflammation to your body. So when I say vaping, I actually mean dry herb vaping. So dry herb vaping is when it's a vaporizer. It looks pretty similar. It's a little probably more it's probably a little bit more thicker. Like it's probably more like it's a little bit of thicker, but basically it has a little capsule where you can open it and you can actually insert your flour. You grind it up and you insert the flour, and it's just a small amount of flour, but it acts as an actual like convention oven where it doesn't actually burn the cannabis. It browns it, or like again heats it up. It's a lot less harsher on the lungs. So I think dry herb cannabis is a lot better than any type of vape pen in oil cartridge. It's more discreet, as well as you get more of the flavor in the actual terpenes. Yes, cannabis has an actual flavor to it if you heat it up the proper way, rather than kind of burning it. So you get a little bit more of that, okay? And again, you're gonna see that still the same onset as smoking, still 1 to 5 minutes, still gonna last the 1 to 3 hours again, but it's just a little bit more discreet. Me personally, for cannabis assisted psychotherapy, we are actually able to use vaping, dry herb vapes in the office because it does not smell up the whole office, the whole building. Literally, all you need is just the air purifier, and it goes away in a few minutes. It is a lot less noticeable, I should say. Okay. All right. The next one we have is edibles. So edibles, depending on if it's a fast acting, a nano edible, versus just a regular edible, it's going to be 30 to 125, 120 minutes to actually the onset of it, but it can last easily from 6 to 8 hours. Like it really just depends on how much you're taking. It's really great for full body relief. It's easy, but it's also really easy to overdo it. So this is why we say start low and go slow because everyone, when I say everyone, anyone who has tried an edible before having the education, probably has a story for you about how they took it too much and they were overwhelmed by it. Okay. So just to be aware of that. Now, um, edibles, again, once you already take it and it goes through your system, that's why it keeps going prolonged so much, right? So that's why you're gonna feel it for 6 to 8 hours because it's digesting it. Now, a little helpful tip before I move on to tinctures, a little helpful tip is if you feel that you have an edible and you find that you're too high or you feel like you're too intoxicated, it's overwhelming, you're starting to feel sick, I please keep a bottle of CBD in your medicine cabinet, okay? Now, I told you how they work together, the entourage effect, but CBD, when taken after a certain amount of period after taking THC, actually helps lower the high feeling. It does not actually decrease the actual intoxicating part, but it does actually reduce the actual psychoactive of you feeling that high. So if you feel overwhelmed that the edible was too much, you took a 40 milligrams, and you know you only should have took 5, go ahead and drop some CBD under your tongue, especially if it's a nano CBD, it will act faster, but it will actually lower that high so you will stop feeling that overwhelming sick feeling, okay? So that's the thing that most people don't know. You can use CBD to combat THC, okay? Now, going to tinctures. These are, again, drops under your tongue. They're really good for fast absorption, better than edibles, and they're more precise dosing. They're discreet. No one will know that you're using it. And again, it just depends on what's the process that they use to actually get it into an oil, right? Whether they emulsified it with another oil or whether it was more of a cold press, okay? We also have topicals. So these are cannabis infused creams, oils, balms. I've even seen bath bombs as well. They won't get you high. I promise you, they will not get you high. They are more localized for pain, inflammatory, or even skin conditions like eczema or psoriasis. Okay. And is a little lesser known fact, there are also suppositories, transdermal patches, or even cannabis lube, especially helpful for people managing menstrual pain, pelvic issues, or those just seeking more of a deep tissue relief. Okay. One of the things that a lot of people also do is, and again, this is I've used it myself, where it comes to when you're having your menstrual, you can go ahead and put a few drops of CBD oil actually on the tampon, and it will help relieve some of those menstrual pains. Okay, so again, things that you don't know if you don't have the education for it, right? So again, the method depends on how fast you want to feel it, how long you want it to last, and what part of your body or your mind you're hoping to support. Again, your lifestyle, your discretion, your comfort, your cultural beliefs, or your preferences. Remember, it's not, if you don't like one method, that doesn't mean that cannabis doesn't work on you. Because there's some people that can't digest edibles. So therefore they was like, I don't feel anything whenever I take an edible. Okay, that might not be the right process for you. Again, everyone's system is different. So it's not a one size fit all. All right. So now we got to listen and learn from the plan. Okay. So this is where intentions turn into integration. Once you've consumed a product, once you've chosen a product and then consumed it, now we have to pause and actually reflect on it. cannabis isn't just about the strain or the brand you buy, but it's how you interact with it. The plant speaks through emotion and energy, and your body is trying to communicate with you. So I invite you to actually listen to the plant by listening to yourself. How does the plant smell? Does the scent draw you in? Does it align with what your body is actually wanting? How do you feel before using it and after using it? Do you feel calmer? Do you feel more grounded? Or do you feel restless? Did your pain go away? Did your thoughts change? How long did it last? And would you want to feel that again? So it's really time to really track your experiences. So again, it can be really super low maintenance where you can do a sticky note saying, okay, I like that one. It could be a voice note on your phone, or it can be a full journal entry saying, this is how I felt when I took it before, after, and during, right? How long did it last for you? There also are some really helpful apps like Tetragram or Relief and I think Strain Maps, I believe, that you can actually put it into an app. The only one I know for certain that is HIPAA compliant is Tetragram. That does protect your information and your data, okay? So again, we have to understand what is your reason for it. Just be mindful for your privacy as well. And again, this over time becomes your personal wellness blueprint. You'll start to see patterns and see preferences, and you'll know what terpenes work for you and what products actually support your mood and be able to honor your body and how it's changing. All right. All right, there we go. I was like, it doesn't want to turn the next page. Oh, it skipped. Okay, there we go. All right, so cannabis and mental health, what research it says. Okay, so I want to be clear that cannabis is not a cure for all, but for some people, it has become a powerful wellness tool that supports mental health when used with intention, education, and reflection. So the research is growing every single day. While we still have a lot to learn, and a lot of the early studies were actually confiscated by the government or different universities from 1966 to 1967 were asked to actually delete the cannabis research when it showed that it actually was reducing the cancerous cells in mice. They knew this back in 1966, and they decided to still put it as a Schedule One drug and ask universities to delete this information. So we have to be mindful about exactly what it is and how the research is out there. It's just that fact that it's hard to find. So one, it can be really helpful. It may support reducing symptoms of anxiety and stress, improving emotional regulation, supporting better sleep cycles, as well as creating a sense of grounding and safety for people with PTSD or historic or trauma histories. For example, in 2014, a study by the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs found that veterans with PTSD who use cannabis report a significant relief in symptoms, as well as in 2020, a review of cannabis and cannabinoid research show that CBD may reduce anxiety in both animal and human studies, especially social anxiety. THC in low doses has also shown potential to help people fall asleep faster. But again, dosage and individual tolerance matter a lot here, okay? So I want to highlight that many people are now using cannabis as a harm reduction tool. So this is how they're replacing or reducing their own use of alcohol, benzodiazepine, as well as sleep medication. So it doesn't always mean that cannabis is the best option or that it's risk-free, but there's a part that it's evolving the conversation around plant medicine for mental wellness, especially for people who feel that they're over medicated, unheard, or stigmatized in the traditional mental health care. So again, this is about finding ways of healing that grows naturally, right? And we actually are reclaiming that science is on our side with this. So your experience will be your own, and some people focus more on, want to be more focused, want to feel more sleepy, want to just get some type of relief. So again, cannabis may not be the answer for everyone, but it is the answer for some, or at least part of the answer. All right, so some other conditions that cannabis may support is PTSD, depression, generalized anxiety, panic attacks, and social anxiety, sleep-related concerns such as insomnia or trauma nightmares, emotional dysregulation, so mood swings, racing thoughts, veterans and trauma survivors are turning to cannabis as part of their healing process. Again, they have to figure out what works best for each individual person, and make it so therefore we also pair it with clinical support. So that's why it's important. That's why I'm here teaching you guys, is also so we can get more clinicians that are cannabis informed, not just using the overgeneralization or diagnosis of cannabis use disorder, because that disorder is really not, it doesn't actually give you the parameters around it. Any type of use is considered a disorder, and that's why it's not really helpful to diagnose with people with that. Sorry, we're almost finished, you guys. Give me just a few more minutes. So integrating cannabis into wellness practices. So this is where cannabis can be paired with breath work, meditation, journaling, emotional processing, again, somatic and body experiences. So this is why journaling is so important. Being able to lower those emotional defenses. Sometimes bringing up things like trauma or something that we feel really burdened with. We want to suppress it, but if we actually take it in stride with cannabis and pair it with it, you're more likely to be able to actually deal with it and heal from it, rather than just keep kind of pushing it under the rug. Okay. Creative expression. And also intimacy and trust. So therefore, it's able to help you connect more with your partner and have also increase your body awareness and pleasure sensitivity. So again, it can be low dose flower or even infused lubes. Okay. So this is where we get the cannabis assisted psychotherapy, where it can open up emotional and somatic blockages for people that can't access unconscious wounds or suppress memories, as well as you have to have a trained therapist to actually be able to help you through these things. Um, and so, again, cannabis can be a very common thread, but it's just the fact of being intentional. All right. And so I just want to wrap this up a little bit. I know we are short on time, and I appreciate everyone staying with me here. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I will stop the recording in a moment. But you can always, through this QR code, you can book a consultation to talk more about cannabis coaching, whether it's individual or group setting. I will be doing monthly webinars on different topics. Once more people get to understand that it can be different ways and avenues of using cannabis, as well as you can also book a consultation for cannabis assisted psychotherapy. This is more if you're feeling stuck, you want to get unstuck, or want to look at a certain trauma that you're just not being able to push through with regular talk therapy, as well as just stay up to date with more workshops and trainings. Um, I am going to send this resource out as well. There are a lot of books, podcasts, and websites. All of these things are available, but it's just not shared. So therefore, I'm going to share them with you, and hopefully you can share them with someone else that may need these resources about cannabis, okay? All right, so I know I had to speed through that last part, but again, this link takes you to having a consultation with me. Specifically, if you set it up on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll be the one that you're talking to specifically, and just getting more information about cannabis coaching, cannabis education, and cannabis assisted psychotherapy. You can also follow me on Instagram at TheCannablissCounselor. Again, this bliss molecule that I love to talk about. And also, here's my email at the bottom as well. Again, thank you all for joining. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now, okay? Let's see.